Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to Unit 5, Week 1. We're going to get started with our vocabulary words. Your first word is the word bouquet. A bouquet is a bunch of flowers that you picked and put together. So you can give someone a bouquet of roses, or a bouquet of daisies, or a bouquet of mixed flowers. Your next word is the word portraits. Portraits are paintings or photos, like pictures, of a person that shows usually mainly their face, or maybe their face and like up to their shoulders. So a portrait is a picture of someone's face most of the time. Next, we have the word fussy. So when someone is fussy, that means they're really hard to please. You can't really make them happy. They're fussy, picky, those are all kind of describe the same kind of person. Next, we have the word sparkles. So when something sparkles, it shines or it gives off a bright light. It reflects the light really beautifully. Our example sentence here says, Mama's hair sparkles in the light. If you've ever seen any kind of jewelry that has a gemstone on it, like a diamond, or if you've seen any of those really cool quartz crystals, those sparkle when you shine light on them, right? They kind of reflect the light in a really beautiful way. Next, we have the word encircle. So encircle means to make a circle around something. So if, for example, you're playing a game and you and your friends are all holding hands in a circle and there's someone standing in the middle, you have encircled that middle person, right? You're around them in the shape of a circle. Next, we have the word whirl. Whirl means to spin around really quickly. So think if you're standing somewhere, you've got your arms out and you're spinning around and around and around, you're whirling. Number 7 is express. When you express something, you're communicating it. You're putting it into words. So you can express your thoughts by sharing with people using your words about what you're thinking. You can express your feelings to share with people using your words about how you feel about something. And next we have the word emotion. Now, emotion just means feeling. So happiness is an emotion, sadness is an emotion, excitement, anger, frustration, love, joy, all of these are emotions, they're feelings. Now let's get into our spelling words for this week. So we're going to be working on closed syllable words. Now remember, we've talked about syllables before, open and closed, and we'll review them again after we read through our words. But just a quick recap, a closed syllable is a syllable that has a consonant letter at the end of it. So anything that's not a vowel. So your words here are blanket, blossom, dipper, distant, foggy, fossil, member, nodded, planner, plastic, rumbles, slender, summer, swallow, tablet, thriller, traffic, welcome, willow, witness, talking, drawn, shawl, cupboard, and friendly. All right, now let's review open and closed syllables quickly. Remember, all words have syllables, and all syllables are parts of a word that have a vowel sound in them. So a word can have at least one syllable, but it can also have more than one syllable. And syllables can be opened or closed. So if a word has more than one syllable, they can either both be opened, or they can both be closed, or it could be a mix with some open and some closed. Now, another thing to remember is if a word has a double consonant in it, that means two of the same letters back to back that are consonant letters, you divide the syllable in between those double letters. So one of them goes in the first syllable and one of them goes in the next syllable. So if you have the word mitten, M-I-T-T-E-N, you divide it right between those two T's. So M-I-T is one syllable and T-E-N is the second syllable. The same rule applies for the word sudden or litter or button or scribbling or chatter. All of these have a double consonant letter in them, and we split it right in between those. So our examples of those double consonants are right here. I highlighted them on the screen for you right now. Now, specifically closed syllables are syllables that end with a consonant letter and have a short vowel sound in them. Open syllables have a long vowel sound. Closed syllables have a short vowel sound, like the word butter or sudden or chair. Those are words that are closed syllables because you see they end with a consonant letter. So all of these either have two closed syllables or one closed syllable in them. And the same is true for actually all of these words that have the double consonant that I showed you earlier. The next thing we're going to review are metaphors and similes. So we're back to figurative language. Now, both similes and metaphors are comparing two unlike things. So two things that are not the same. And one important thing for you to know is you have to know what is it that they're comparing. Because if you don't know what they're comparing, then it doesn't make any sense. So a metaphor compares two unlike things by saying one thing is the other thing. So the clue words that you're looking for are variations of the word is. So is, am, are, was, were. Those are all clues that are telling you one thing is another thing, or I am something, or we are something, or he was something, or they were something. So I'm going to give you examples of each one, and in parentheses, I'm highlighting for you, or I'm explaining for you the two things that are being compared. So this is something that's very important that you need to be able to do for metaphors and for similes. So if I say, I am a sleepy sloth today, that means I am comparing myself, right? I. So we're looking at what came before that clue word and what came after that clue word. Those usually tell you what you're comparing. I am a sleepy sloth today. So I'm comparing I, myself, to a sleepy sloth. If I say life is a roller coaster, life isn't actually a roller coaster, but sometimes it feels that way because of all the crazy things that happen. So my clue word is. So what came before it? Life. So I know I'm comparing life to something. What am I comparing life to? What's coming after that clue word is the word roller coaster. So I'm comparing life to a roller coaster. If I say her eyes are sky blue, I'm comparing her eyes. Are is my clue word, right? And I'm comparing them to the color of the sky. If I say the calm lake surface was a mirror, so I'm comparing the surface of that lake, right? That's what I'm comparing. That's what comes before my clue word was over here. I have my clue word was. So what came before it? The calm lake surface. What came after it? A mirror. So I'm comparing the lake's surface. It was so calm, right? There were no waves and no ripples that it looked just like a mirror. It was reflecting everything else around it. My last one, I used the clue word were. I could say the snowflakes were a white blanket on the grass when we woke up this morning. So I gave you a longer sentence this time because I want you to be able to identify the things that are being compared, even if they're in the middle of a long sentence. So what comes before my clue word? My clue word is were. What am I comparing? The snowflakes were something. So the snowflakes is what I'm comparing to something else. What were the snowflakes? They were a white blanket on the grass. So I'm comparing the snowflakes to a blanket, right? It helps you to imagine and to visualize. So similes and metaphors, all types of figurative language, their job is to help you picture things in your head. They give you a much more exciting, much more vivid, colorful, interesting image for you to imagine. Now, similes work the same way, except they use very specific words. They only use two specific words. They use like, or they use the word as. So it's comparing two things, saying one thing is like another thing, or one thing is as another thing. I ran as fast as a cheetah. I'm comparing how fast I ran, so me, I, to a cheetah. The boy is as quiet as a mouse. So the boy, we're comparing the boy to a mouse. You were brave like a lion. So I'm comparing you, or your bravery, right, to a lion. That's how brave you were. If I say her hands were cold like ice, I'm comparing her hands, right, the way her hands feel, to the way ice feels. They're that cold. I'm comparing her hands to the ice. So metaphors and similes both compare things that are not the same, right? Two very unlike things, and they use specific clue words to help you figure it out. So metaphors tell you one thing is another thing. Similes tell you one thing is another thing by using the words like or as. So that's the only difference between them. Next, we're going to talk about Latin prefixes. Now, prefixes, remember, come at the beginning of a word, and it comes from the word affix, which means to stick to something or to attach to something. So we are sticking something on the front of our word. And the word prefix has a prefix in it, has a prefix pre, which means before. So a prefix is something that is fixed before a word. So it's added on before the word. So we have the two prefixes extra and inter. So extra means beyond or outside. So if we're talking about extraterrestrials, we're talking about something that comes outside or from outside or beyond the earth. So terrestrial means earth. So extraterrestrial is something that comes from outside the earth. So we're talking like aliens right now. If we're talking about an extracurricular activity, it's an activity that is done outside or beyond your regular school activities. So extracurricular. Curricular comes from curriculum, and that's talking about the things you do and learn about in school. If we're talking about something that is extraneous, that means it's unnecessary. Extraneous is talking about information that is not necessary or outside what is needed. So if, for example, you're telling me about falling outside on the playground. You run up to me and you say, Miss Dana, I was outside on the playground and the grass was really green and the sun was really bright and there was a stick in the way and I tripped and fell. The grass and the sky and the sun are not important. What was important was that you tripped and fell, right? So there is extraneous information. There's extra that is not needed. If something is extraordinary, it is beyond or outside what is ordinary, right? It's amazing. It's more than what you're used to, more than what is normal. Now, inter means between. So extra means outside, right? And inter means between. So the internet is a network that exists between networks that exist between each other. So they connect things between each other. If we talk about something that is international, it is between countries. National comes from nation, nations are countries. Interstate means between states. So we're talking about like freeways and things that go from one state to another. They run between the states. An intermission is a break in the middle or in between something. So if you're watching a play or a movie, sometimes they'll have an intermission, which is like a break time in between where people might go get snacks or they might go to the restroom or whatever. Now the word interrupt also uses the same prefix. So interrupt means to burst between someone else's words, right? You're coming in between, they're talking in between the words that they're saying, and you're saying your words. And the last thing we're going to talk about today are adjectives. So adjectives are words that describe a noun or a pronoun. They're describing words, and they usually use your senses, right? So they're describing the way something looks or tastes or smells or sounds or what it feels like. And they usually come either right before the noun that they're describing, or they come right after a linking verb. Now, remember, some of the linking verbs that we talked about were was, were, is, am, and are. And I'm going to give you examples of all of these, so don't worry. So we use adjectives all the time to describe things to others. So when you want to tell someone about the juicy red strawberry that you ate, for snack, juicy and red are describing that strawberry. So when you're describing it to someone, you want them to imagine how great it was. You use adjectives to describe. So if I say, I saw some red roses, red is the adjective here because it's describing the color of the roses. So your adjectives usually describe size, age, color. They give an opinion if you think this is the best book in the whole world. If I say the big yellow sunflower bloomed, so big and yellow describe my sunflower. So those are adjectives. The fast runner won the race. So fast is describing my runner. The book was long but interesting. So here we have our linking verb. We have was. So we're describing the book in this one. So the first few sentences, those adjectives came right before the noun they were describing. Red described the roses, big and yellow described the sunflower, fast described the runner. Now, here we have the noun, and then we have a linking verb, and then we have the adjective. So book was our noun, was is our linking verb, and our adjectives here are long but interesting. So long and interesting both describe the book. The little puppy played in the big park. So here I have two adjectives describing two different things. Little describes my puppy, and big describes my park. So anytime you're seeing a word that is telling you about your noun, that's your adjective. Now, a fun fact, adjectives usually are written in a specific order. When you have more than one adjective in a sentence, they're usually in a specific order. And I say usually because the English language is full of exceptions, but most of the time, this is the order they go in. First is your opinion. So if you think it's beautiful or sad or happy or exciting or any opinion word, best, you know. Then size, then age, then color. So those are usually the order. So our 6-month-old brown puppy. So 6-month-old is age, brown is the color, and it's describing the puppy. If I talk about a beautiful pink rose, so beautiful is my opinion, pink is the color, and then I'm talking about the rose. If I say the tall 8-year-old, so tall is describing the size, and the 8-year-old is describing the age. So these are different things for you guys to know about adjectives. You've been doing these already without thinking about it because these are the ways that we're used to saying it or we're used to reading it. So it kind of becomes second nature, right? It becomes something you do without really noticing that you're doing it, but now you have names for them and you have the structure and the rules that came behind them. All right, let's jump into our stories for this week. This is one of my favorite stories in your book. It's a really sweet story called Mama, I'll Give You the World, and it's a realistic fiction. Now, this story, as a realistic fiction, means it's something that could happen in real life. It didn't, but it has all the elements that could be real. So talking about people doing things that they could really do in places where they could really be. So let's go ahead and listen to the story together.
Genre: realistic fiction. Mama, I'll Give You the World by Ronnie Schotter. Illustrated by S. Selig Gallagher. When Papa was around, Mama loved to dance, but Mama doesn't dance anymore. She works hard every day at Walter's World of Beauty, cutting, coloring, and curling. After school each afternoon, Louisa's bus drops her at the door to the world. Everyone greets her: Walter, Rupa, Georges, but especially Mama. Mama smiles and makes a place for Louisa, on a cushion under the palm tree. First things first, Mama always says. So there by Walter's bottles of beauty, with names that whisper promises. Raspberry Radiance, Evening Glamour Glow, Sunday Night Soother, Louisa does her schoolwork. While Mama, like a magician, turns Mrs. Coo's dark hair the color of sunset, Walter, Georges, and Rupa cut and comb. Louisa does a math problem. Then she writes a story for English about a girl with a magic brush that brushes people's cares away. When she finishes her homework, Louisa takes out her scissors, her glue, and her paper and does what Mama does: cuts and colors and curls, portraits of the customers. Everyone in the world is a flower, her mother always tells her. Together, they make a bouquet. So Louisa cuts slowly, noticing how different each flower is, and how each one comes in a special size and shape. In between customers, Mama rests in her chair and lets Louisa brush her long, thick curls. Louisa brushes hard, pretending she is the girl in her story, carefully watching her mother's face to see if she can make her smile. Mama hardly ever smiles, but when she does, She is the prettiest flower in the world. Louisa loves to look at the pictures at her mother's station. One is of Louisa. The other is of Mama long ago, happy and dancing, in a large room that looks like a palace, crowded with people and full of lights. Mama says the name of the palace is Roseland, but Louisa doesn't believe her. She thinks her mother has made up the name because she loves flowers. Can we go there? Louisa asks. She imagines the two of them holding hands and dancing at the palace Mama calls Roseland. But Mama shakes her head no. She holds the picture in her hands, and her eyes look at something far away and once upon a time, something Louisa can only guess at. Under the dryers, the ladies loudly whisper their secrets, but Louisa has a secret of her own. Tomorrow is Mama's birthday, and tonight, Louisa is going to give her the present she's been planning for such a long time. For the past few weeks, whenever Mama isn't looking, Louisa has whispered her secret in the ear of each of Mama's favorite customers. When she sweeps up snippets of hair for handsome Mr. Anselmo, who always tells Mama, "Just a little off here and a little off there. Please leave it as long as you dare. For you see, don't you know, you can see it is so, that I haven't a lot left to spare." When she helps Mrs. Malloy, bent over and sad as she inches into the world on her walker, but smiling and standing nearly straight an hour later, when, feeling beautiful again, she leaves. When she helps Mama brush and braid Hazel May Dixon's Go Everywhere hair till it looks like neat, shiny rows of licorice. When she sprays fussy Mrs. Fogelman's hair that refuses to stand up and obey until Mama teases it with a comb so it can't help standing up, fluffy and high as a great gray cloud, just the way Mrs. Fogelman likes it. And when she removes the giant pink and purple rollers that turn Mrs. Rodriguez's dark tangles into an ocean of gentle waves. At 6 o'clock, it's time at last to go home. Louisa exchanges secret winks with Walter, Georges, and Rupa. Then she and Mama hang up their smocks and empty their pockets, heavy with tip money. It all goes into a special envelope. First things first, Mama says. She is saving for Louisa, for college. Mama wants Louisa to learn everything. Outside, the world stretches before them, dark, mysterious, and twinkling, with store and street and starlight. Louisa and Mama stand together looking at it, feeling oh so small. Mama's hair sparkles in the light. So do her eyes. The world is big, so much more for you to know, so much more for you to see. One day, if I can, Mama says, patting the envelope deep in her coat pocket, I will give the world to you. No, thanks, Louisa. Tonight, if I can, I will give the world to you. For your birthday. At home that evening, Louisa asks Mama to try on her prettiest dress, the one with the roses and violets and vines that encircle Mama's waist the way Louisa's arms do when they hug. Please, Mama, Louisa begs. Not now, Mama says. I'm tired. Pretty, please? Louisa asks, opening her eyes as wide as Walter's windows and looking at Mama in a way she knows Mama can't refuse. All right, Mama says, and puts on her dress. While she does, Louisa pretends to be searching for something. Mama, she calls out, we have to go back to the world. I forgot my book. Louisa hurries and hands Mama her coat. Mama pushes the coat away. No, she says, it can wait until tomorrow. Louisa is worried. But Mama, she pleads, it's for my book report. Don't you always tell me first things first? Mama sighs and puts on her coat. Louisa tries not to smile. When they get to the world, it is dark. Louisa holds her breath as Mama takes out her keys and opens the door. The moment Mama turns on the light, music fills the world. Surprise! Louisa's portraits dance along the walls and mirrors. Walter, Rupa, and Georges have filled the room with roses and have hung tiny lights that wink like eyes. All of Mama's favorite customers are there, dressed up. But Mama, smiling, is the prettiest of all. Happy birthday, everyone yells. Then, speech. Mama blushes. First things first, she says, and gathers Louisa into her arms. For your birthday, Louisa says, I wanted to turn the world into Roseland. You did, Lulu Bell, Mama says. Thank you. Thank you all. Mama, Louisa asks as the music swells from Walter's boombox, will you dance with me? Mama doesn't move, and she doesn't answer. She looks at Walter, Rupa, and Georges smiling at her. She looks at Mrs. Malloy's 2 old feet tapping beside her walker, like 2 new feet. She looks at Mrs. Fogelman's great gray cloud of hair turned golden by the lights and changed into a clear weather cloud. She looks at Mr. Anselmo and Hazel May Dixon and Mrs. Rodriguez and Mrs. Koo, all dressed in their finest clothes to honor her. Then she looks deep into Louisa's eyes, and Louisa sees that Mama's eyes are no longer far away. They are near and clear and wet with tears. Shall we dance? Mama asks Louisa. And Mama and Louisa dance. They twirl and whirl and laugh together. Soon everyone is dancing, and the world seems to sparkle and spin faster and faster around them. Then Mr. Anselmo, with a bow so deep that his bald spot shows, and he doesn't even care, asks Mama and Louisa to dance with him. And they do. And the way Mr. Anselmo smiles at Mama, and the way she smiles back at him, make Louisa think there is no more beautiful place in the world than this world, the world they are dancing in now.
All right, that takes us to the end of our first story. Our next one is also a realistic fiction, and it's called What If It Happened to You?
Genre: realistic fiction. Compare texts. Read how a 4th grader gets others to help a family in need. Jana Robinson couldn't hide the worried look on her face when her friend Yasmin missed school. The 2 quiet girls had become close friends in the short time since Yasmin's family had moved to the city. Both girls came from big families and shared a love of drawing animals, baking pie, and helping out the community. Sitting side by side on the bus and being in the same classroom meant that Jana and Yasmin spent their days swapping secrets and studying subjects. So when Yasmin did not show up at the bus stop or at school, Jana knew that something was very, very wrong. "May I please have everyone's attention?" the teacher asked. "I have some unfortunate news. Last night, an electrical fire broke out in the apartment building where Yasmin Ali and her family live." "Oh no," Jana cried out in a voice that was not her own. Every face in class turned toward her because it wasn't like Jana to express such strong emotions. "Yasmin and her family are safe, but the Ali family has lost everything in the fire," said Miss Lentini. For the rest of the morning, Jana thought about how she could help Yasmin. At the lunch table, she listed ideas on scraps of notebook paper as the other kids played with their handheld game players. Jana shook her head. How could they sit there and play games at a time like this? Other kids argued about which sneakers or jeans were the best. What if you only had the clothes on your back? Finally, she decided to ask the kids at her table to do something for the Ali family. Yasmin has 2 brothers, Louis. Do you have an extra hoodie or some jeans you could donate? She asked the boy across from her. Louis didn't even look up from his game player as other boys crowded around him. Could you ask me later? I'm about to beat this level. Donate clothing to the Ali family. Give our allowances to the Ali family. Jana turned to the girl sitting next to her. What about you, Suni? Can you give some of your allowance to help Yasmin and her family? Well, I've sort of been saving for a new bracelet, she answered, looking away. Jana looked at the string of bracelets that encircled Suni's arm. But you already have so many, she said softly, wondering why no one seemed to care about Yasmin. In the hall on the way back to class, she walked behind Trey and Ryan, who were complaining about the book reports they had to finish before they could go to the skate park. It suddenly dawned on Jana how she could make kids think about helping Yasmin and her family. She stayed after school to write and draw, and when she had finished, she showed her work to Miss Lentini, who smiled and offered to help. The next morning, photocopies of Jana's drawing and rhyme hung all around the school hallways, classrooms, and cafeteria. A paper finger pointed out from each poster above a rhyme that Jana had written. What if it happened to you? What if a fire took all that you own? Wouldn't you feel all alone? What would you do? Who would you turn to? Please help the Ali family. Bring extra clothes, school supplies, and any other donations to Miss Lentini's class. Jana's poster got everyone's attention. It made students imagine themselves in Yasmin's position. Kids donated any pocket change they had. Suni gave her whole allowance. The next day, kids brought hoodies, jeans, t-shirts, and shoes. Louis donated an old game player. Trey and Ryan brought in some books and a skateboard. Soon, several boxes in the classroom were full. Jana helped carry them to her teacher's car and rode with her to the shelter where the Alis were staying. You've been a good friend to Yasmin, Jana, said Miss Lentini. She would do the same for me, said Jana.
Okay, that takes us to the end of our stories in our literature anthology. Next, we're going to hop into our reading and writing workshop, and we're going to be reading a realistic fiction story called Sadie's Game.
Genre: realistic fiction. Sadie's Game. The referee's whistle went off like a shrieking bird, signaling Sadie's second foul of the game. It was only the first quarter, and Sadie had already collided twice with another player's wheelchair. Her coach waved her off the court for a substitution as the crowd shouted catcalls and jeered behind her. She had never seen a crowd express such disappointment before. Sadie watched her teammates whirl and spin in front of her. Her emotions were all over the place, and it showed in her basketball playing. If only she and her brother had not argued this morning about the game. "What's so important, Richie, that you can't be at the game? Don't I matter anymore?" Sadie had said. Richie was Sadie's whole world, and they both loved sports, especially basketball. Sadie loved to play before her accident, and it was Richie who had taught her to play again afterward. There had been days when she did not want to get out of bed, and he would coax and bully her until she got up. He even borrowed a wheelchair himself to help her learn to play the game all over again. Together they would roll across the outdoor court, zipping, zooming, passing, and dribbling all day long. But lately, Richie preferred to hang out with his new high school friends. Sadie would watch through the window as Richie polished every little nook of his new car. He was as fussy as a mother cat cleaning her kittens. When he drove away, Sadie would keep staring out of the window, tears clouding her eyes. Mama was her sun. Her arms would reach out and encircle her in a long, warm embrace. "Sadie," she would say, "your brother loves you. Even though he's got new priorities now, that doesn't mean he doesn't care." But Sadie felt hurt. Sadie looked up and saw her coach frowning. She searched sadly for her mother, expecting disappointment in her eyes, but instead she saw a wide smile. It was the same happy face she saw in portraits of her mother at home. Sadie followed her mother's gaze to find Richie jogging toward her across the gym, holding a purple and white bouquet of flowers wrapped tightly with a ribbon. Richie's eyes sparkled and his smile gleamed. He bowed to his sister and handed her the flowers as though she were a queen. "But we're losing. How do you know we're going to win?" she asked. "I don't," Richie said. "It's not important. What I know is you're like a whirlwind on the court, and there is no way I'm going to miss my little sister's big game." He put his hand on her shoulder as he said, "It's great to have a lot of new friends, but I realized that you're my best friend." Sadie smiled. Those words meant more to her than "I'm sorry" ever could. She rested the flowers on her lap and went back out onto the court. Right then, Sadie decided to play the rest of the game with the bouquet in her lap. With her brother watching from the sidelines, Sadie stole the ball from an opponent and dribbled her way to the net, making the first of what would be many amazing shots for the team.
All right, that takes us to the end of our stories for this week. Next, we're going to talk about our comprehension strategy and skill. So we're going to talk about visualizing again, and this means to imagine. Remember to try and picture something in your head using the words and the descriptions that the author gives you to kind of illustrate or create a picture or an idea of everything that's happening in your brain while you read the author's words. Then we're going to talk about a problem and solution. And in pretty much all stories you're going to read, you're going to come across a problem that the characters are trying to solve and a solution or how they fix that problem. Let's go ahead and listen.
Visualize. When you read, picture the characters, key events, and setting of the story. As you read Sadie's world, stop and visualize events to help you better understand the story. Find text evidence. After rereading page 312 of Sadie's World, I can use the details to picture the events that are described in the story. Richie was Sadie's whole world, and they both loved sports, especially basketball. Sadie loved to play before her accident, and it was Richie who had taught her to play again afterward. There had been days when she did not want to get out of bed, and he would coax and bully her until she got up. He even borrowed a wheelchair himself to help her learn to play the game all over again. Together they would roll across the outdoor court, zipping, zooming, passing, and dribbling all day long. But lately, Richie preferred to hang out with his new high school friends. Sadie would watch through the window as Richie polished every little nook of his new car. He was as fussy as a mother cat cleaning her kittens. When he drove away, Sadie would keep staring out of the window, tears clouding her eyes. Mama was her sun. Her arms would reach out and encircle her in a long, warm embrace. "Sadie," she would say, Your brother loves you. Even though he's got new priorities, that doesn't mean he doesn't care. But Sadie felt hurt. I visualize Sadie staring out the window as her brother drives off in his car and her mother hugging her. This helps me to understand Sadie's feelings. Problem and solution. Identifying the problem and solution in a story can help you understand the characters, setting, and plot. The problem is what the characters want to do, change, or find out. The solution is how the problem is solved. Find text evidence. As I reread pages 311 through 312, I can see Sadie has a problem. I will list the key events in the story. Then I can figure out how Sadie finds a solution. Graphic organizer. Characters: Sadie, Richie, Sadie's mother. Setting: a basketball court. Problem: Sadie is playing badly. She is upset that Richie did not come to the game. Realistic fiction. Sadie's game is realistic fiction. Realistic fiction is a made-up story, has characters, settings, and events that could exist in real life, may contain literary elements such as foreshadowing. Find text evidence. I can tell Sadie's game is realistic fiction. First of all, Sadie is a character who could exist in real life. Also, the setting and events are believable. The story includes foreshadowing. Foreshadowing. Foreshadowing hints at what is going to happen without giving the action away. When Sadie looks up at her mother and sees her smiling, the author is giving the reader a clue that something good is about to happen. Similes and metaphors. A simile compares two things by using the words like or as. A metaphor is the comparison of two things without using like or as. Find text evidence. I see a simile in the first sentence of Sadie's game on page 311. The referee's whistle went off like a shrieking bird. In this sentence, the sound of the whistle is compared to a noisy bird. The referee's whistle went off like a shrieking bird, signaling Sadie's second foul of the game.
All right, that takes us to the end of our notes and stories for this week. If you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing week. Take care. Bye-bye.